Welcome to Emerging Franchise Brands, the podcast that introduces you to the visionary founders of America's fastest growing franchise opportunities. We'll also hear from industry pros as they share insights on what it really takes to achieve the elusive milestone of 100 plus locations. I am your host, Frank Fumi, founder of I9 Sports, and my 20-year journey from inception to acquisition has given me a unique perspective on how to succeed in franchising. Join me as we welcome today's guest. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. On today's show, I have the Chief Development Officer of Ducklings Early Learning Center, Kim Collier. Kim, how are you today?
I'm great, Frank. Thank you so much for having me on today.
Thanks for being on. So tell us all about Ducklings. How did you get started in the business? I understand it was Mom who founded the company, but I'd love to hear how this concept was born.
Well, Ducklings is full day fun and learning for children 6 weeks through 6 years of age. And my mother did start the business. She founded Ducklings back in 1994. She was the director for a YMCA program here in Chester County, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
And the board of directors decided to close the childcare program for that particular location. And in Chadds Pennsylvania here, it was still kind of rural and there weren't a lot of childcare options. So it displaced about 40 families, leaving them without care.
Wow.
So my mom bootstrapped it. She figured out how to start a childcare center. She borrowed $40,000 from my dad's 401k plan, found a small rented space that was the sales office at a new townhome development called Pond's Edge. And that's how we started. And she kind of figured out licensing. She figured out all the requirements as far as toys and furniture. And the very last thing that she needed to figure out was a name. But being in a place like Pond's Edge, Ducklings seemed like the perfect fit.
Oh, of course.
And over the years, it's really just been absolutely perfect and kind of come to mean a whole lot more.
Oh, that's so sweet. So did your mom have any entrepreneurial background before working at the YMCA?
She had done a little bit of everything. Her background, she started as a real estate agent back with Century 21, back when the mustard yellow blazers were in vogue. And then she wrote mortgages for a bank. And when my youngest sister, Hillary, went to school, my mom went to school. She went back to college and went to college for what she wanted to do, which was education. So like so many women, she put off her education until her kids were taken care of. And we see that a lot in early education. We see a lot of moms that are making or deferring a lot of choices. Yeah. So we understand what it is that they're going through. But my mother's background in real estate and in mortgages, all those skill sets that she kind of compiled just made it kind of perfect for what she's doing now, being a franchisor of this early education company.
Absolutely. So when did you come aboard?
I came aboard right after my oldest child was born. I'm kind of in the same boat with her. My background actually is in audio engineering and music production. So we always joke that I made a lateral move from, rock stars to toddlers, a lot of tantrums and vomit.
Oh, that's great.
But again, it's working moms, you tend to make decisions and you tend to have some choices. And I just was very, very fortunate that we had this family business and it's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be with my child during the day, and being in music, you really, unless you're with a band that happens to take off, there's not a whole lot of choices out there. Yeah. So I went to work with my mom, and
what year? Yeah, I would say, what year was that?
That was early 1998.
Okay.
And I've done pretty much everything there is to do in the business, from changing diapers to changing light bulbs. I started working as like the administrative assistant, doing the billing, doing tours, helped her open a couple of schools. So I've been with the company about 26 years now.
Yeah, and now awarding franchises.
Now I'm awarding franchises.
Sweet.
That's right.
So I would imagine, as the chief development officer, one of the questions you must get from people that when they inquire is that, okay, what makes Ducklings unique compared to the other, early learning centers and, daycare centers throughout the country? There's so many franchises.
Well, many of us in the early ed space offer a similar base service,
Mm-hmm.
but Ducklings has always been a little different. Our program focuses on whole child development through play-based learning. We have all the favorites. We hit all those points, ABCs, 1, 2, 3s, colors, shapes, but we also incorporate a social emotional element.
Mm-hmm.
We want to make sure that children are successful in all facets of life. We have a gross motor program that straddles those basic scholastics with social emotional as well as physical education, working in teamwork, working in a curriculum compendium that just carries over what it is that they're learning in the classroom. All of our schools also come with an indoor gymnasium, so we want to make sure that we make the best use of that space.
Okay. So let's see. We have 4 company-owned locations, 12 franchise locations that are open now. You guys started in 94, but didn't franchise until 2019. So you guys had quite the run before getting to franchising. What was was there like a defining moment, or what made that decision for you guys, or what made you guys decide to transition to franchising?
We had 4 large locations, and we were constantly being approached by families that wanted to have a Ducklings in a location that they were moving to, or they had family that was out of state, and they said, oh, you should really put a Ducklings over here, over there. And all of our Ducklings corporate locations had really great staff, longtime staff, and we wanted to grow more, but we knew that we were really maxed out with what we had on our hands at that time. We also had just gone through national accreditation, and national accreditation is painstaking work. It is, you have to document absolutely everything that you do in all facets of your business. And back then it was before it was digitized. You have to do it in like 3-ring binders. And little did I know at the time, but we were basically writing an operations manual. So we go through all of this. We had also been approached on several different occasions by longtime staff that had wanted a Ducklings of their own. And they had said, if you ever decide to sell this, I want to buy it from you. So when my mom had started thinking about like wanting to expand, it just kind of seemed like the next natural thing.
Makes sense, right? And well, you kind of answered my next question already, which I get from so many founders, and that's, well, I want to franchise my company, but I have no idea where am I going to find my franchisees from, and marketing is so expensive. But you found franchisees the typical way that many of us do, and that is they were customers. They were customers first. It's referrals, right?
It always is.
Yeah.
And actually, our very first franchisee was one of our longtime employees.
That's the other one. Yep.
Correct. So in 2019, our very first franchise owner was the longtime director of one of our locations. Deb bought Ducklings Oxford as our very first franchise owner. She partnered with her daughter, who started Ducklings 20 years prior as an infant. So we think that that's a little extra cool. And yeah, and we have 5 Ducklings owners who we call it the Triple Crown Club right now, where it's, they were a Ducklings staff person, a Ducklings parent, and now they're a Ducklings owner.
Well, wait till we get to the the next stage, and that is a child that was in Ducklings that grows up to be a franchise owner.
Well, we already have one, but that's a good start.
That's fantastic. Kim, who is your ideal franchise owner?
First and foremost, our ideal franchise owner has to respect children. And there's a big difference between liking kids and respecting children. Children deserve to be listened to and understood. Just about everybody likes kids. They think they're cute, pat them on the head and send them on their merry way. But Frank, you worked with children for years.
Absolutely.
It's not always the easiest thing in the world, but it's usually the children that are the hardest to deal with. They're the ones that really need the most extra love. You really need to tune in. You need to slow down and pay attention. Those are the people that we're looking for. And it doesn't require a degree in education in order to do that. It requires a certain skill set. So that's what we're looking for, is we're looking for that particular person. And at first we thought, of course, all Ducklings owners are going to be teachers. Of course they are. They're going to be teachers. Better yet, they're going to be preschool teachers. And they're just going to come in and they're going to run the best Ducklings ever. And it's going to be perfect. And while we have preschool teachers as owners, and they are terrific, we've changed our perfect avatar to be a person who has a mind for business, but a heart for education.
That is so well said. Kim, I just did a recent podcast with another founder who is in a different field altogether. Actually, she has, it's a medical school franchise for kids. And she thought, of course, doctors were going to want to be franchise owners. And I thought when I was starting my business that athletes were going to want to be franchise owners. And it wasn't that they didn't become franchise owners. It turns out they were not the best franchise owners. And I think same thing as you. I think that is so common, in that for the folks that are watching or listening to this that are thinking of getting into franchising their company, they probably have this misperception of who they think is the ideal franchise owner. But you discovered exactly what I did. And I think also Dr. Mary did. And that was, it comes down to business. It's always business first. They could have a passion for kids. They could have a passion for sports. They could have a passion for medicine. But ultimately, it's having the interpersonal skills and having that realization that it's business first. Otherwise, you're not going to be around long.
Always. And you can teach certain skills. Sometimes business is one of them. You can teach somebody to read a profit and loss report. You can teach somebody certain things. One of the things that you can't teach is respect, and you can't teach passion.
Right.
So they really do need to come to the table with that skill set already there. I mean, that comes down to character. So finding out someone's character is paramount. Are they teachable? That's another thing that you need to figure out. If someone's not teachable,
right,
then you've got to move on.
As the chief development officer, you're the one that's having to sniff this out, though, before you bring them aboard. Do you have any tips, tricks, or strategies on how you're able to decipher who's the person that meets that criteria or not?
It's really through connections and spending time with them, doing a lot of talking. Right now, I'm very fortunate that with our growth plan, we're keeping everything really close. We've decided to grow out of this central home base of Chester County, Pennsylvania, and kind of grow out almost like rings on a tree, where we're able to grow out. Okay, now we're going to go to the next ring, grow to the next ring. So everyone has been fairly local right now. So we're able to spend a lot of FaceTime, one-on-one time, really get to know our franchise owners, or even our franchise hopefuls, as we've been calling them around Olympic season lately. So you don't have that Zoom filter.
Yeah.
that things can get past you.
Well, because we know that people they're always on their best behavior during interviews. And I know that when I went through hosting discovery days, and I sold franchises myself for my company, especially early on, I came across a lot of people that, they put their best foot forward initially, and then the real person came out after they had signed the franchise agreement, got through training. But that's human behavior. That's what people do for jobs too. They're always on their best behavior on a job interview. So it's really takes a special, it takes more than a special person to be able to decipher who's good or bad for their brand. Have you guys thought about maybe using like an assessment tool, like a DISC or predictive index? Do you guys use anything like that?
We don't use it right now, and it's one of the things that I'm going to be implementing with the franchise company. It's not a set it and forget it. You don't like, oh, I'm going to create a franchise company. Here it is. Okay, goodbye. No,
Right.
it's this like constantly evolving thing. And it's what I love about it the most, because I'm this person that gets kind of bored easily, and I'm kind of itchy, and I'm, constantly moving. So I love the fact that you're like, I was that kid that painted her room like every season. My poor parents. I can't imagine how thick that paint was on my bedroom wall, but I'm constantly changing things. So the fact that, and thank goodness for this mastermind group I'm in, because the ideas that are just constantly flinging around. And one of the best ideas I've gotten recently was from Stephanie Copeland from Gideon
Yes,
Math
we
and
know
Reading,
Stephanie.
who was
Stephanie, we had her
who was
on our
just
show.
on. She has the most wonderful discovery day. She sends out this link and has the franchise prospect create a PowerPoint where they present themselves when
Nice.
they come for discovery day. And I'm just like, I told Stephanie, I was like, I'm stealing this idea. This is the greatest thing in the world, because I think we get a little carried away sometimes, we being all of us,
Right.
where you start selling yourself a little bit. And I want the franchise prospect to sell themselves to us. Tell me why you should have a Ducklings. Tell me why it is that you want to do this. Why is it that you want to leave what you're doing now
Mm-hmm.
and have a Ducklings location and do this every day, learn to do what it is we've created over 30 years, work with our team. Why should we make you a part of our family?
That's so smart. Kim, that is a brilliant lesson for folks trying to get into franchising their business. Because it's sort of, we're kind of giving them the warning that when you first franchise, you're kind of, I don't want to say desperate, but you're kind of desperate to sell or award a franchise, but you have to remain steadfast and just patient and not blink and award a franchise to the very first person that wants to write you that check. And you've kind of spun it around on that, spun it around, and you're forcing them to sell you on why you should accept them. And I think that's so smart. And it's difficult though. It's not easy when you're starting out and you're trying to keep the lights on.
Someone that we worked with early on said that she did a keynote or something at one point, Kay Ainsley with MSA Worldwide. And she said that she asked a group of franchisors, how many people in this room, if you had the opportunity to not sell to the very first person you sold a franchise to, how many people would undo it? And she said, almost everybody in the room will raise their hand.
Uh-huh.
Because with that first sale, you're so excited, like somebody wants to buy you,
Right.
that you're not seeing past the sale.
True. And the culture has now been set. That's, you're starting the foundation from there.
You're absolutely right. So you have to be very careful not to step in that bear trap.
Yeah. Okay. What about think about your franchisees for a moment. What are some of the traits on what they actually do that makes the most successful franchise owner? What separates the great from the mediocre?
Franchisees that work full-time in their business are always the most successful. We have franchisees that are doctors of education. We have franchisees that are former CPAs. We have franchisees that were insurance actuaries. The ones that, at least for the first year, who are boots on the ground in their location. Now, you have to hire a qualified childcare director. That's a requirement of state licensing. And even if an owner would qualify as a director, we recommend that they don't act as their own director because you can't possibly be there from morning till night. It's better to have, and it's also nice to kind of have a teammate, somebody that you can bounce ideas off of, someone that's going to work with you. It's lonely at the top. It's nice to have a team. So someone who is there to manage the staff, the owner is there to manage the staff, meet with the parents, and just be a presence. And then after the first 9 months to a year, then if they want to start just kind of backing off slightly and not be there as full time, then that's fine. But those owners that committed to that full time on-site schedule for that first year, they're the ones that are the most successful, always.
Yeah, that's great. Great advice. For folks that are interested in being part of your franchise, what's the investment range to open a location?
This year, the full initial investment is anywhere from $895,000 to just over $2 million.
So it ranges, of course, based on where you are, how big the facility is.
Correct. Yeah, it always comes down to real estate.
Yeah. What is the kind of the ideal size footprint?
Anywhere from 11,000 to 14,000 square feet. And it would be anywhere from 1.5 to 3 acres of property.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So these are big
big.
locations. Yeah. And our schools tend to have, on average, at any given time, about 130 to 150 children.
That's a lot of ducklings.
That's a whole lot of ducks. Yeah. And all of our schools have full indoor gyms, a full children's library, and about 13 classrooms.
Whoa. Okay. How big is it? Is it their protected territories? How far do you separate the each center from one another?
We don't have exclusive territories, but we try to separate them, around 3 miles or so.
Mm-hmm.
With childcare is that oddball franchise because you can only have so many kids at any given time.
Sure.
And quite often, families as a client, you'll have the same family in a childcare center for 8, 10, 12 years straight. It really is rather wonderful. You'll watch these kids come in as newborns and they're with you until their youngest sibling leaves to go to kindergarten. And then they come back around as 18-year-olds to work for you in the afternoon.
Right.
And we actually have parents now who were ducks. And like you said before, we've got an owner who was a duck. My daughter works at the Ducklings down the street. She was a duck. So it's really starting to come full circle. It's really terrific.
And the beauty of your business is that there's always a new 6-week-old that's needing to go into a center, right?
Kids keep coming.
Yeah. One of the things I was reading in your franchise about your franchise is that childcare is obviously considered a recession-resistant industry by business analysts, and I feel the same way about kids' sports because moms and dads will always spend money on whether it's sports, whether it's music, art, tutoring, and certainly childcare. They have no choice, right? I always think it's funny that we talk about recession resistant. I used to talk about it in my business. And until there's a recession, people don't really think about it. And then when there is, they're like, oh crap, I need a business that's recession resistant. So let's kind of get ahead of this now. I think there's another great reason why somebody should consider your franchise is the recession resistance. And quality care and education will always remain, the top priority for parents, right?
Absolutely. I think it's one of those things that parents are not afraid to invest in. It's one of those things that parents don't look at and say, I'm not spending money on that.
Right.
Parents will look for the best possible childcare to send their children to, where they might look at different cereals and be like, I'll buy this one because it's less expensive, right? That's
Yeah.
what they're going to do. But they're not going to look for the cheapest childcare center to send their child to.
Right.
They're going to look for location. Does it fit with where I'm going during the day? Does it fit with where we live? Does the curriculum meet with what it is I think would be a good fit for my child?
Mhm.
Ratios are mandated by the state, so you don't need to worry about that. But are the reviews good? Is it safe? And as long as it's not too exorbitantly priced, it's something that parents are going to do. Because ratios are set by the state, that's where things start to max out. And that's why you're seeing waiting lists of a year, 2 years long. When COVID hit, there was a weeding out, and we lost a lot of childcare centers, a lot of the small mom and pop centers, a lot of the church basement centers, and it was unfortunate. And it gets back to what you were saying about these being a business. The ones that closed were the childcare centers that weren't necessarily operating like a business. And it was unfortunate because the government had PPP loans that really, really helped.
Mhm.
And all those folks that didn't understand how to operate a business and didn't have their LLC in place, didn't have all their paperwork done, and weren't able to apply for the grants and weren't able to apply for the PPP loans because they didn't have all that documentation,
Mhm.
they had to close. But people like Ducklings franchise owners, they did just fine. We helped them get through the pandemic, and actually it was how we got our start. We opened our very first franchise locations in 2020. So it was baptism by fire.
Yes. Anthony and I joke all the time about the amount of franchisors that we talked to that opened in 2020. I don't know what was in the water in 2019, but an awful lot of people they were interested in expanding their business, and just they opened in 2020. But you got through it, and so you know how to get through it. Your industry, though, has been one of the few industries that you can say has been extremely stable. But are there any trends or anything that you've seen? I mean, you've been in the business since 1998. Is there any trends or anything you see that the industry is going that's been different in the past 20, 25 years?
There's a bit of a split. You see two schools of thought, where one school of thought is a lot of technology,
Mm-hmm.
where you'll see the Promethean boards and a lot of tech. You'll also see immersion. There's Spanish immersion and Chinese immersion. That's popular in a lot of urban areas, and that's understandable. But then there's schools like Ducklings, where we don't use any screens because it's not how children's brains develop. Children learn through imagination, they learn through creativity. We want to start to develop that social emotional side,
Mm-hmm.
where they make friends, they learn consequences. They have to learn that way before they can learn from a screen. They get a lot of screen time anyway. Let them figure it out with a friend. Let them figure it out with their hands. Let them go to school and get messy. If you don't want to deal with it at home, it's okay. We'll deal with it at Ducklings. We'll let them paint with chocolate pudding. It's fun. They can paint with chocolate pudding with their hands, and then we'll let them lick it off. It's all right. It's part of the curriculum. we'll handle it. And then we'll send you pictures and they'll get in the car and tell you all about it. And it's a great time. It's multisensory. It's just building all those synapses.
Right.
And it's part of being a kid. And it's also a wonderful thing to have your child in these early ed programs because parenthood is fun. Being able to watch your child do the stuff that you thought was fun
Right.
and watch them just relive the things that you just got just lit up about. Like it's do-overs. It's the best part of it. And we like to make sure that the families are involved. We have a few family events throughout the year. Also, parenthood can be a little isolating. You know, they give you this baby in the hospital and they're just like, here's your baby, bye.
Right.
And some people aren't exactly 100% equipped. They want to do this, they love their child, but it's hard and it can be a little scary. And you're going to see your childcare provider much more often than you're going to see your pediatrician or you're going to see your best friend or your mom or your sister. So we can really be a lifeline. We can help answer some of those harder questions about feeding or sleeping problems. And your child's friend or your child is going to have friends who have parents that are in the same exact boat that you're in. And before you know it, you took your child to preschool and all of a sudden you have friends and you just built this larger community.
That's true.
And it's something that you didn't expect.
Yeah.
And it's really one of the best things about Ducklings.
Kim, you've done a great job of establishing really here why Ducklings is so different. And I commend you. You've done a great job. Obviously, you started by your mom. I'm curious to think about as you're expanding this out. You did mention, we talked about starting in Pennsylvania and now you're expanding out in Delaware, or you have expanded in Delaware. And you talked about these rings to grow out. How do you evaluate the potential for new markets as you expand, besides the fact that it's just, a wider radius of where you started?
We're very fortunate that we work with a few developers that like nothing better than to build Ducklings locations for us. They find locations, they say, hey, this looks terrific, or we'd like to put a Ducklings here. And it's really helped us get a really good start. They will get a Ducklings location started. They will lease it to our franchisees. It's a nice long lease of 15 years with really good terms. And we'll sign an LOI to get it started.
Okay.
But because these are bigger properties, bigger real estate, it's been a better idea for us in these early days to get them underway. Some of these projects, depending on how friendly the townships are, it can take sometimes 2 years. That's a really long time to have someone who goes into a franchise opportunity who is like bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and super excited. And then it's like womp womp because everything just slows down. So if they can find one of our opportunities that are under development that might be underway, that are already through township or have broken ground, it really cuts that time to open down considerably.
Yeah, that's the big challenge for, any sort of brick and mortar is trying to get that thing open.
Townships can really slow things down depending on who's sitting on the board at the time.
Yeah. All right. How about big picture? What about the long-term vision for the company? How big is big? How far do you see yourself growing Ducklings out?
We don't have any big plan right now. Right now, we just want to partner with the right people at the right time. We want to do slow and steady growth, just growing out those rings a little at a time so that when these locations get full and we open the next one 5 miles away, we're kind of solving a few problems at the same time. So we have an existing location that might have a 2-year-long wait list. And there's nothing worse than every time the phone rings to have to constantly say no to people. Like it's killing our franchisees. They hate it. But to be able to tell people, oh, well, we have this new location, it's opening 5 miles away. If you can get started there, and I'll call you as soon as something opens up here, we've done two things. We've helped the existing franchisee. Then you've given the new franchisee an opening enrollment boost that is priceless.
Absolutely.
They're also benefiting from brand recognition. You're cutting down on their grand opening marketing cost because you don't have to do as much if you're already getting that word of mouth marketing out. It's helping. Just that rollover, overflow enrollment is really helping everyone out.
Yeah. Oh, it's very smart. It's very controlled growth and very calculated in terms of just opening up by, spreading out those rings, like you said. With the flip side, there's a lot of brands that say, I just want to grow this thing out and we're going to grow, across the country, coast to coast, and we're going to try to just open up as many, and you burn out.
I get it, but we don't want to have a ducklings explosion, because with explosions,
we don't want exploding ducks.
You know what happens? It's too many ducks. Can you imagine? It's like a horror movie. Explosions are big and loud, and then it's like followed by chaos.
Right.
And then a whole lot of nothing. Like you're just left with nothing.
Right.
And we don't want that.
I think you guys have made this very clear. This is a legacy business for you guys. And I can see you doing this for life, aren't you?
We are in it for life, and we're in it. And I think we've said that. We've got kids that have started with us as babies, and now here they are owning their own Ducklings business. And I hope that they get to do what we've seen, where they have kids that they signed up as babies and they get to see the same thing. This is very much a legacy business. This is a feel-good business. Mm-hmm. The work-life balance that it offers is unbelievable. Schools are only open Monday through Friday. No nights, no weekends, no holidays. Heck, we have been closed between Christmas and New Year's.
That's pretty damn good.
You can't beat that.
No, not at all. I'm thinking about how, you've been through this for 6 years. Has it been a memorable piece of advice that mom has given you along the way here, and that's been an influence in this business?
My mom says a lot of stuff.
So does my mom, by the way. My mom has endless amount of stuff to tell me.
I have learned absolutely everything I know about the childcare business from my mother. And one of the favorite things that she uses to teach our children's books. There's so much to learn and teach using children's books. And we were just talking about this the other day. There's a really great book called The Magical Yet. And it's about mindset, about the word yet being that you may not be able to do things yet, but you're learning. It's about, what can you do now and what do you think you'll be able to do in the future? And it's really been the cornerstone of Ducklings curriculum about teaching children about where you are now and where you're going. I think that's been our franchise. This entire Ducklings journey has been about yet and about mindset.
Oh, that's great. Kim, if someone was interested in learning more about Ducklings, where would they go?
They'd go to ducklingsfranchise.com and they can fill out an inquiry. They can also find me on LinkedIn, Kim Collier, and they can email me at kimcollier@ducklingsfranchise.com.
That's awesome. And one more thing, you mentioned early on, and I'm a huge fan of Shannon Wilburn. You want to talk about maybe a shout out about that mastermind group that you're part of? It's a group of wonderful ladies. We've had a bunch of them on our show.
Shannon Wilburn is the founder of Just Between Friends. And She is quite possibly the world's best connector of people. And she started two groups of masterminds, the advanced group and the advanced group 2. I was lucky enough to be invited to join the advanced group 2 this past year. It is a wonderful group of C-suite franchisor, emerging franchisor women. We meet once a month via Zoom, and we're getting together for our retreat this year after Springboard. It's going to be the first time I'm going to be meeting all of these women face to face.
Wow.
I'm so looking forward to it. What they have brought to my life has been absolutely priceless. I'm forever thankful to Shannon. She is incredible. She's just such a gift to the franchise industry, but she's really become a wonderful, wonderful friend. I'm incredibly grateful to her.
Beautiful. Well, I appreciate it. And I appreciate everything Shannon's done for us here. And I'm glad you gave her that shout out. Last thing, Kim, I always finish every podcast with a franchise tip jar because the industry is so generous with sharing of information, as you mentioned earlier too. If there was an entrepreneur that wanted to franchise their concept, is there a piece of advice that you would give them before they go forward in franchising?
Read everything. This business is built on contracts. And I think we go into it assuming that the people who are writing these contracts and writing the ops manuals and writing these things are good at what they do or have the best of intentions, but the second you sign that, like, that thing is sealed. You have to make sure that you know your business better than anyone. When we first started out, the company that we went with to write up our documents, it turns out was not necessarily great at what they did. And man, did we find some mistakes, like lots of mistakes. Like they copied and pasted the stuff from another company and the other company's name was all over the place.
Oh.
And it was a disaster. And not only that, but in the original contract, it stated that if we ever sold to PE or anything, that they would get 20% of the sale price.
Oh, they sneaked that in there, huh?
Oh, yeah. Well, my mom caught that right away and was like, yeah, take that out. But you just have to make sure that you don't get lazy, that you read absolutely everything.
Great point. Well, Kim, thank you so much for being on the show. I appreciate it. I wish you all the continued success with Ducklings. And it was great to finally meet you. Thanks.
This has been really wonderful, Frank. Thanks so much for inviting me. I had a wonderful time.
Thank you for tuning into the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. For additional insights, guest applications, and to stay connected, visit us at efbpodcast.com. The Emerging Franchise Brands podcast is for entertainment purposes only, and the views expressed do not necessarily represent those of Emerging Franchise Brands, its host Frank Fiume, or Emerging Franchise Group, LLC. Any discussed franchise or investment opportunity requires thorough investigation, obtaining proper disclosure documents, and expert consultation before making any investment decisions. The podcast and its host do not offer professional advice or endorsements, and they hold no responsibility for actions, representations, accuracy, or consequential damages related to the podcast content.